Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming. It's great to see you here. So we've got what we think is, or what we hope is an interesting session today. And I think, like us, you'll recognize that the world has adopted Teams with a vengeance. All of the organizations that you work with, or your own organization, are successfully using Teams for calling, meeting, basic collaboration. But I suppose what we wanted to do is sort of think about what the next steps are and where we're taking it and where hopefully we're taking our clients, and perhaps to share some of the things that we do internally at Content and Cloud, but also some of the client work that we're doing. So really moving beyond just Teams, if you like, and thinking about Teams voice and running different kinds of events and the sort of run-up and the execution and the follow-up to these. And as you can see, we actually have somebody who's not here today, so we thought we'd spice this up, make it a little bit more interesting. Our colleague Jason is he's at his home, and he's one of the speakers today. So just quick introduction. So my name is Chris O'Brien. I'm the Products and Services Director at Content and Cloud. I also have with me...
I thought Jason was going next. Steve Goodman. So my name, my main role at Content and Cloud is focused on Microsoft 365. So yesterday's session was all about Microsoft Teams Rooms. So I came here with several Microsoft Teams Room systems, but unfortunately they said for the audio and stuff like that in the room, it's going to be too big to put an MTR in. So we went with a different approach to get Jason with us today. So he's coming in via a non-recommended method, but you can see him here today. And I'll let Jason introduce himself as well. Hi, Jason.
Yeah, hello everyone. Well, I've got a bit of a dilemma here at home. I'm not feeling particularly well, and my wife has got coronavirus at the moment, so I thought it'd be best for me to socially distance and obviously bring the real world to life with the utilization of hybrid meetings in this capacity.
Good stuff. Thank you, Jason. Okay, so look, it's really great to see you all here. Hope you're having a great day. Thank you to the sponsors for making this event possible. Content and Cloud are one of them, but all of these companies have made a massive contribution to make this event what it is. So thank you very much to all of you guys. Okay, let's get us started. So I think we all understand the world that we're working in now, but some of my favorite statistics are probably these ones. So Gartner predicting that 51% of knowledge workers will be remote by the end of this year, not by the end of 22 or 23, but that kind of proportion, meaning 32% of the workforce, in fact, remote, and by that they mean at least 1 or 2 days a week. And that is a complete shift, isn't it? You know, so the world is not going back to how it was. And when you look at Microsoft's own statistics, so billions and billions of minutes in Teams per day, and these meetings get fatiguing, don't they? I think we all recognize that just a day of back-to-back meetings that aren't particularly interesting, aren't particularly lively, they can be draining. So the focus of our talk is what we can do about this. And I suppose we're all understanding of what Microsoft are investing in. So their moves with technologies like Viva, broadening out into employee experience and going into territories that they've not previously had a significant footprint in. The investments they're making in hybrid and Teams rooms, the kind of choices that we've got for running company-wide events, whether it's an all-hands event that's the entire company or one for a particular team, Microsoft making big investments here. So the focus of what we're doing here, we're going to look at 2 different scenarios. We use the sort of the framing of an all-hands meeting, but that is kind of open to interpretation. So we'll look at that in the context of a company-wide meeting and then a team meeting, and think about the different flavors, different things that you might do in each of those. And then Jason will sort of go deep in some of the techniques and approaches and kit and devices that you can use to really get to what you might describe as hybrid meeting excellence. Okay, let's start off then with thinking about a company all-hands meeting and what you might do around those.
Yeah, so we need to consider that there's several types of meeting that we'll use to do this. So first of all, we need to think about how the business want to engage with us on this. So if the business is trying to get a particular message out to employees, what is that message and how do they want it to be presented? Are they looking to do something fairly interactive where everybody is able to contribute and feed back their ideas? Should it be something that's quite informal and free-form, where, especially if you're a smaller organisation, less than 1,000 people, everybody can have a say? Maybe your organisation or business is trying to drive that culture where everybody talks about stuff and shares their ideas openly. So if you're big users of Yammer, for example, then you're used to working out loud. But many organizations know that employees aren't always going to come forward, especially when it's difficult topics, and the executives need that feedback, but it might need to be more anonymous. And then there's another type as well where you might want it to be something where it is more of a broadcast to get that message out. And there's different ways of getting that done. And we're going to have a look at some of the different parts of Microsoft Teams that make that quite easy to do, but it means that at the moment we've got several different technologies that we can pick from within the same product. And that can be a bit confusing sometimes, because you might look and say, well, I want to run a live event, then, well, there's all these different features. Is it just a big meeting, or is it something else? So one key part of this that is often overlooked is the production quality. And ironically, bringing somebody in over Surface Go to the room here isn't the best use of it. It's almost as if I intended to give you a terrible experience of what not to do. Because terrible Wi-Fi in a hotel, bringing somebody in remotely, this would not be your best experience for getting your executives in front of a room full of people. And this is why, look at the UC workshop, we're showing how to use these different devices the right sort of way. But often, as you'll see on the screen here, executives need to look a certain way. They want the message to be delivered very, very clearly. And you go beyond Microsoft Teams rooms and Teams-certified devices, and you go to a production quality, a bit like that, where the message is really being pushed to them, to all the staff, and the executive or the leader is shown at their best. And that is absolutely going to depend on the type of technology that you're going to use to deliver this message. So the first one here is live events. So live events are the thing that has been around inside Teams, and then prior to that, inside Skype for Business for several years. So Skype broadcast meetings was the first version of this. And if you've used that, has anyone used Skype broadcast? Anybody? Yeah? A few of you. Did you have a great experience with it? Was it So the feedback from marketing colleagues and people like that was the analytics were really bad. The data that they could get out the other side wasn't really sufficient. And it didn't always work. It felt like a bit of a kludge. And that was the first iteration of that. Now, live events is built on that platform where you effectively start a meeting in a different way. You have a producer of that meeting, and then you have the people who are going to present into that. And then you can decide how that feedback's going to be gained. Is it going to be anonymous? Is it going to be external? Is it going to be something where there's a live Q&A with moderation? And it's a very controlled experience. Over the last 12 months, it's improved a lot. So if you used it at the beginning of the pandemic, then it wasn't the best. It struggled a little bit, really, to work every time. And it's now quite slick. It's taken on a lot more of the new features inside the main Teams meetings client. The quality is a lot better in those meetings, and it can do a lot more stuff that people would normally expect to do. but it's got limitations. And those limitations are good in one way because they mean that there's a clear framework for how to do this in Teams live events. You've got that producer model. Only one person's going to be sharing content at a time. And you've got a model where people can click the link and join. You can pick whether they're inside or outside of your company. So you've got that control to make sure people outside the org aren't let in. And then we've got the second model, which is the newer large meetings functionality. And that's based completely on your normal day-to-day Teams meetings. The same thing that's linking us to Jason over here. And that means that all of the core stuff that you get inside a meeting, so being able to use together mode, being able to use content sharing, all of that works in exactly the same way that it will do today. So if you're using a new feature such as PowerPoint Live, you're putting the presenter in reporter mode to be able to talk through the content or putting them into it with a virtual green screen, you can use all of those features. But several different technologies that have came into Teams give us additional features. So there's the large meetings, which allows us to have meetings that can go up to an overflow of 20,000 people, if I recall correctly, but much larger meetings where people will not all be expected to contribute and chat. We can lock down what they can do. So we can make sure that only the presenting team, only the executives who are going to talk, or perhaps the moderators who are going to introduce the session, are able to present content and are able to unmute themselves and talk or chat. We can decide who can and can't have video on. And that functionality lends itself to several different use cases. One of those is webinars, and there's a new webinar functionality to set that up. And that's not only suitable really for external stuff. And if you're using tools like Dynamics, it's good for external stuff. Other technologies don't yet integrate with it. But it's absolutely good for internal large company meetings where you want people to be able to register for those. And if you've deployed things like Teams room systems out to the organization, then it's going to work pretty well with those as well, because the new stuff announced in September allows meeting rooms to join those, people to raise hands. So large meetings, it's a good go-to because it makes things easier to use the technology people are familiar with, and it's building on stuff you can already do. Now, the third one along here is that the hardware out functionality. So you saw the person being filmed, they're going to be produced, they can either go into the meeting, or if you're working with a team and they're looking to push this to another platform, so perhaps you've got a platform that you're going to use for them to be able to see the content, interact with it, but it's outside of Microsoft 365, then that doesn't mean you have to then go and use a separate product to stream them out. So if you're a marketing team and you've picked something for those events, or a comms team that are looking to get the message out, and there's a platform that you picked, which is bespoke, bought for that purpose to get that employee feedback, and it's going to give a YouTube live style view of what's happening and provide functionality Microsoft doesn't provide, but what your business needs, then we can use NDI out or hardware out to be able to have somebody in the meeting, the producer, who can then send that content somewhere else, produce it, lay it out the way that you want it to look, and then that's pushed into those other platforms. And that lends itself more to less interactive stuff that's better produced, because you'll have people in good quality video, good quality audio, and the experience for an attendee, for somebody watching it, they'll expect it to be more like watching a live stream or a broadcast, because we're using those features. But for the user themselves, if they join, they're just using the Teams client like normal. And then on the far right, if you are a big Yammer user, that's where you're trying to get hold of people, first-line workers in particular. If you focus that as the engagement platform, then we can push our Teams live events into that, or we can push our NDI, our stream out with a tool like OBS sitting in the middle onto those platforms. So things you need to really consider are, first of all, making sure that all the prerequisites are in place. So is everyone going to be in a right location to be able to see this stuff? Have you got good connectivity? Have you got the right devices in those locations? If you're renting out a hotel to do the conference and you're renting out one in each location, have you got the time to set this up before you start that session? You might need the whole day to get everything right, rather than 5 minutes before you start, unless you want to just do it like this. You might want to make sure that the network connectivity is good in those locations. If people are returning to the office and have started to use Teams, then bring them into locations to watch it, bring them into an event space. Because one thing that you'll see, what we've seen with clients over the years, is everyone watching a live stream has a big toll on the network, and there's technologies that you can buy that sit in the middle that help deal with those streams from live events and other technologies to make sure that it's all going to work and it's all going to be a good, solid experience. And one of the benefits of using the large meetings capability is all of the accessibility stuff that Microsoft has built into the suite. So being able to see live transcription as it's happening, being able to see who the speaker is as they speak, allowing people to be able to put up their hand, ask questions, and moderate properly. So being able to reach beyond the pure stuff that you'll get in a live event or just using another streaming platform, you've got the opportunity to say, well, actually, whilst we'd like one of the ones on the right or the left-hand side where we were looking at using a bespoke platform or live events, actually, we'll meet all of our accessibility needs, we'll reach all our workers in a much better way by sticking with all those investments Microsoft have made into the core meetings experience. So thinking about those things are absolutely crucial. So I'm just going to go through a little bit of how this works. Demo is not working for this session, so our backup is in place. And first of all, with live events, it's a very straightforward setup process. You've got different models for who's going to join. So you can bring in things like rooms that need to be as part of this if you're going to present from there, and then you're going to bring in the people who are going to present. So our CEO and one of the leadership team, Chris, they're going to do a big announcement to the company. There'll be people in a particular office that's going to go out to all of our locations all over the world, the US, South Africa, and Manchester. Everyone will be, and Milton Keynes, I should add, as well, and Reading. They're all going to be able to join and find out what Chris has to say alongside Pete. But the contribution will be moderated. The Q&A will be moderated. If there's any difficult questions Chris doesn't want to answer, then we'll be able to have a look. I'll be able to have a side chat and say, Chris, there's a question about your hair. Shall I put that one forward?
My height.
Had a haircut, yes. Are you as tall in real life as you look over the camera? So, it's a simple setup experience. Now, the next one, this is the webinar setup experience, where if you're going to say, right, everybody join this, this is going to be that chance where if they register for it, you'll send them a meal voucher as well so they can get something from Deliveroo or whatever. That's what we do. And register for the event, put your name in, and we'll know who's going to be attending the event. But it's really a Teams meeting invite with those special settings. But we've got some customizations for the page they'll land at, company branding, and it's all in the suite. It's designed really for external webinars, yes, but of course it's a meeting. You can lock things down as you need to. And simple setup process, we've got the date, going by the time, it's probably one of our beer clocks. You can put in all the settings and it shows everything. And the same is true for the stream and Yammer experience as well when we go to that, where we've got the ability to set all of this up the right way and then push that out to the organization and pick the technology that we're going to use to be able to send to it. So we can choose Microsoft Teams, and then we've got that external option where to produce content. Think of that scenario where you've followed Microsoft's recommendations, you have first-line workers all over the world using Yammer as their place to find the information. The event is going to be on there. They're going to pick up their phones. They're going to look at it from the side. But you're going to push the content using something like OBS that's going to bring all of that in. And that's where that external app or device allows us to push content into Microsoft 365 using either NDI to bring people in over Teams, or if it is a camera like this that's going into an encoder, into a PC, or something like a Atom Mini Pro that's going to stream it straight into the experience inside Microsoft 365. So those are the options really available for that. And the key things are, picking the right technology and also thinking about the end-to-end experience, the production quality, what that's going to look like when you get all of that set up. So, Chris.
All right, thank you, Steve. So the other context, of course, and maybe something that more people in the organization have to become adept with and learn the ins and outs of, is just a big all-hands meeting that's at the team or departmental or division level. So company-wide events certainly have their considerations, but for this flavor, some of the things that people focus on, how can I be engaging? This construct of a presenter and a slide deck, we spend so many hours of our lives being faced with that. So what's the way to sort of make the most of that paradigm and be engaging? How do I bring people in? How do I get their opinions? How do I make this a two-way engagement? How do I work together with my team? How do I collaborate? How do we run a meeting that is really around ideation and solving problems? What are the tools I can use to do this? And then maybe some other scenarios around documents, how we work with them. Sometimes the sort of documents that an organization produces clashes. There's almost two worlds colliding in terms of how documents get used in a meeting. And I'm going to show you one of our processes that our project managers run on a weekly basis, where they bring documents together during a call. And then, of course, the idea of taking the experience further. Maybe if you can make some investment, what can you do with Teams as a platform to build on the meeting experience and extend it in different ways? So just, I suppose, the answers to some of these, or some of the things that you might think about, and we'll go through all of these, but you've got all of the presenter modes. They're now generally available. You can present yourself in different ways, and there's something called PowerPoint Cameo, which is on the roadmap, but not yet here, which is where you get a block in PowerPoint, and you place yourself as a speaker where you like, slide by slide. So if you've got some financial information on the right-hand side of a slide, and actually you need to be on the left for that slide, you can do all these things. You've got that control. For the sort of two-way engagement, maybe it's bringing in some of the tools to a meeting, whether that's forms and surveys or Whiteboard. The idea of using Syntex, perhaps, to quickly read the documents during a meeting. That's the scenario that we use. And I mentioned, of course, about extending the Teams meeting construct with custom development. So I'll show you all of these. So first off, just before I sort of go into a demo, so the presenter modes. Look, so we've got different flavors of these, and I think they're far better than the way that most people tend to present. So we've got standout, we've got side by side, we've got reporter, and they're all slightly different variations that you can choose between. Now, I find that people aren't using these yet, and I think one of the reasons is because they don't know where they are. It's not always front and center or very obvious. But these are available today. They're in your tenant. The place to find them is when you go to share. You need your camera on when you share, and then these will appear, and that's where you pick the different modes.
And one of the challenges was they didn't work across all types of devices. So like recently, MTRs, they get them. So you've got confidence that actually you're not going to be someone with a black background that's been taken away as a picture in the meeting. Actually, you're going to be displayed on all those devices the way that you're expecting.
Yeah, well, it needs to have that reach, doesn't it? So
yeah,
it's good to know that's where we are. Okay, so let's look at a couple of these other things then. And what I'm going to do is play a video. Okay, so the way that we often start these Teams meetings is actually thinking about what happens in the run-up to them. So this is our intranet at Content and Cloud, our digital workplace. This is our product fresh, and it's the thing that bridges me to my work, whether it's tasks assigned to me in Planner or my calendar and so on. But what you'll notice is the way that we signal to the organization that these events are happening, whether it's at the team level or company-wide, is by creating an intranet article, signaling that this is happening. And you can see other things tying in here. So Viva topics. So we've got people joining our business every day, and maybe they don't know what professional services is, but the Viva topics page lights up in that article, and they can now see that there are 8 teams and who the relevant people are. All right, let's switch to something else. So we are now in a meeting, and we talk about the ways of bringing people in and surveying and working together. So Whiteboard is obviously a key way of doing this. Microsoft made huge investments recently with effectively their V2. And something that can be really effective is doing some work ahead of time to set up a whiteboard ready for the meeting, rather than just starting from scratch in the meeting. This is Dan and I collaborating live in a whiteboard during the call. And this is the idea of moving beyond what was possible in the physical space, where there's one person generally at the whiteboard with the pen. Now this is 5 of us in there live together on the call. We're solving problems, we're adding suggestions based on challenges that we've identified. And now it's a collaborative whiteboard. It's very much like Miro or Lucid or other tools that you might have used. Now Microsoft's capability is there. Talking about gathering input, asking for a quick sort of pulse check on something to people in the call. So I can go and add the Forms app to a poll, and it knows about questions that I've previously asked, but when you look at how slick this is, so I'm typing the question, maybe it's simply, how happy are you at the moment? The AI auto-suggests some possible answers for a question like that, and it makes it that I can do this in 5 seconds flat, so I don't need to think about listing out every possible answer. The AI behind the service is helping. I can launch this into the meeting. Everybody that's on the call will see the card. This is a task form that appears. I'll give my response to say that I'm very happy. There's another respondent, Dan, my colleague, who said that he was somewhat happy, possibly because I'm his manager. Anyway, we've got his opinion, which is great, and I certainly recommend this. This other scenario is based on a weekly meeting that our project managers have. What you're seeing here is a statement of work. We produce many of these, many different engagements. This is redacted, of course. I haven't got client names or values in here. But what happens is the PMs get together in the deal pack allocation meeting. This happens weekly. And it's basically about bringing together statements of work that they've been involved in that week. What we have in place is Syntex reading this document. So somewhere in all of our statements of work, there is a table that's the investment table. It's the cost to the client. And we've got other things in there, like who the exec sponsor is, who the project manager is, who the business lead is. And what we do live on the call is it's basically not a bring out your dead, but bring in your statements of work for the week. And each of the project managers, they drag it into a particular library, and they do it live on the call. This is sometimes what we have to do to actually get the statements of work in the right place. Everything's being transacted through our ERP and CRM systems, of course, but somewhere in there is a document. And what happens is Syntex reads the documents live. It understands the engagement value. It can pull that out, and we've got some visuals against it. But it's also identifying where there's a missing piece of information. So there's a couple of documents there where the internal project manager has not been specified. And because Syntex can read large volumes of documents much faster than a human can, the PMs do this every Friday morning. They each drop into a particular library. Syntex is identifying anything missing, and then we understand what gaps need to be filled, as well as which documents have been sent out that week. So powerful stuff, and bringing these into the context of a meeting can be very valuable. Final thing I want to talk about is the idea of perhaps building on Teams as a platform. So this is a project that we're delivering for a client right now. They're a big global recruitment company, and they have a challenge in that people can't easily access their client information. They've got a fairly legacy CRM system, so we're surfacing this in Teams, and people can query for a particular client, and they get a list of matching clients. They can drill into it and see more details about this client, who the account manager is. They can start a chat with him. And this is really sort of bringing their data to life, and it's no longer trapped in this CRM system that only certain roles in the company have access to. The relevance really is how this brings the content into meetings. So a couple of things that you can do just in the normal sense is you can look up a client so that you can share it with somebody that you're talking to. Maybe you're having a one-to-one chat to a colleague and saying, it's this Royal Bank of Scotland record, it's this contract that I mean. And what you can do is just pull up a quick search thing. We're using a messaging extension, and it will post to the other person, whether that's a one-to-one chat, a group chat, or something in a channel, or something else. Where this gets interesting is bringing this into a call. So what we're building is a solution where, again, if there's some kind of call, maybe it's an all-hands meeting and somebody needs to look up a client record, you can add our app to the call itself, and this is with Teams platform capability that is fairly recent, to be honest, but you can now add an app to a call. We go through the ad experience, and then in the pane on the right, again, I can get that lookup and sharing experience to quickly dig out a client contract or a client record and share it with people on the call. And we're looking at other ways as well. So there's this thing called the meeting stage, where I have the full sort of screen real estate to play with in my app, and we're looking at ways of building in signatures. And this is all available today. So it's really about thinking beyond just basic calling and meetings, and thinking about the capabilities of the suite overall, and using these techniques to really supercharge the meetings. Okay, so those are some of the things that we're doing around meetings. I'll just leave you with a couple of thoughts on Whiteboard and things like that. So certainly think about this as something that you might do in advance for big meetings, and think about the different use cases where they're really valuable. A couple of other tips on there, but perhaps the main thing to be aware of is Microsoft have extensively re-engineered Whiteboard. It's not there in all of the clients yet, so understand where it is and where it isn't. It's in Teams and it's in web, but it's not on some of the mobile clients yet. It's not on Windows as well, so you'll get a different experience for now, but you know, some great things that you can do there. Okay, so we've talked about company all-hands meetings. We've talked about Teams all-hands meetings. The next thing that we want to think about is, you know, what else can you do to optimize for hybrid meetings? How far can you take it? And I think we are over to you, Jason.
Yeah, hello everyone. Just can we make sure we have a nod of your heads, speakers, if you can hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah, perfect. So one of the things we're looking at in the next kind of hybrid experience is to understand how things are going to be moving along and what's going to happen as when we move back into the office. What can we expect? And so the hybrid world's changed quite drastically in the last couple of years. How we're trying to get things moving and how we're trying to get things moving along are going to change. Not only that, the meeting rooms and how when we return to it is going to change as well. So what we're finding out is that we have to take consideration of new hardware, and we have to take a consideration of what it is and how do we get hip on hybrid. So if we can move on to the next component, we look at how we're going to look at how these things are actually going to transpire. So this is good of Microsoft's viewpoint of how we're going to start working. So we're going to take things like a focus room and a medium room, a large, and then a hybrid room. And what does that mean? So what that means is that we're going to utilize the existing components that we have, whether they're Android, Windows, or Microsoft Surface Hub, to be able to supply those solutions and services to them. Now, the good news is that focus rooms can often be transferred into a hybrid room, because traditionally those spaces are going to be small. We're going to have the availability of those rooms in front of us, and we'll be able to then go and move those rooms into a hybrid space quite seamlessly. If we look at going forward, what we'll see as well is if we transfer into the new one, there we go, into the new hybrid room in space, what we'll find out is that Microsoft have made some massive investments, particularly around intelligent cameras. So intelligent cameras allow us to take a room and take a camera and ultimately segment these things up. So as the hardware becomes aware of it, and Microsoft is thinking about it as well as potentially using an Azure ability to be able to do this, to take a camera, segment up the information within it, and then have that set up in the room. So even though if you have a room layout that doesn't correspond very natively to or very seamlessly, Microsoft will soon be able to segment that information up with the use of intelligent cameras. In addition to that, intelligent cameras will be able to identify who you are. So soon you'll be able to put your own little kind of fingerprint on things. So soon we'll be able to go and upload our information around our voices. Soon we'll be able to go up as well and give an image of ourselves, and we go and we look around to what we look like, kind of like when you do a facial sign in with your phone. Teams will take that similar information and be able to sign you into your Teams meetings using your face within the intelligent camera, so that way it knows it's you. Likewise, front row, and having focus on what's happening with the front row, then you could have a bar down below of what's happening, or above, or wherever you want to be able to have that information. And that front row gives the ability to have focus on what's really relevant, have focus on what the content, and obviously have the gallery view down below. Now this is similar to the gallery view, but it takes it to the next step. And likewise, we're going to see things around what's called dynamic view with people feed. And what that means is it will segment off the information of who's actually in the room. So if you have somebody is sat in the same meeting room within that, and then you're trying to then go and have other people at the meeting, people who are sat in the same physical meeting room will be grouped, whereas other people will be segmented off. So that way you can understand and things will flow more seamlessly, and you have a much more seamless hybrid experience. And likewise, like Microsoft has pointed out here, that the compound annual growth rate within Microsoft rooms, particularly around huddle spaces, has grown and grown and grown. We're seeing the small meeting room spaces globally just absolutely explode and be able to pull upon these things. If we go to the next slide, please. Within that, we have information around the Teams rooms and what they say making things better. So what ends up ultimately happening is we'll see people who are actually in the room with you. Those machines will start to disappear away. So historically, what Microsoft said you should do is not bring your personal device with you. Leave it at your desk, leave it safe, leave it in your bag. But Microsoft have ultimately pulled away from that now. They want people to be present within that meeting space to be able to have that and bring your device with you. Likewise, when you bring your device into it, you don't need to see everybody else that's inside your meeting. So what you'll realize is when you start using your personal device inside a meeting, you're not going to have the people who are physically present in your meeting room with you on your display. So Microsoft is using new technologies to bring that all together within it. Next, please. Within that, we'll see Teams rooms getting in better and better still. So now we have the dynamic component. So this is a larger screen where we're talking about where we actually have people on the right-hand side where it has people who are actually in the meeting and the people who are in the meeting room. And using the intelligent cameras, you'll be able to find out and identify who's actually inside that meeting space and pull their identity for you and be able to see what's going on within it. And likewise, all this information will be pulled together and be brought into the e-discovery information later on, so you can find out who said what and when. If we go to the next slide, we can see how hybrid spaces will ultimately lay out. And this is going to be a key component for Microsoft and how we're going to do this. Now, a lot of times, and anybody that's been in video conferencing for quite some time will see this and think a bit like it's a telepresence. But it goes so much more than that, where we have the chat components on either side. We have information that's being shared. We have all of it being brought together. And obviously, all that information is being together with the people bar down below and the gallery down below and all that information. So Microsoft are putting a big focus on hybrid for 2021 and 2022, and with how we are going to pull these things together. So to kind of bring everything together kind of as a whole, if we go to the next slide, please, Steve. We originally have how all these separate components, so we have multiple views and multiple dashboards. We have the ability to see content. We have the ability to react. We have the ability to engage, whether it's to tell somebody that they're doing a very good job and giving them a thumbs up. Likewise, soon the Microsoft Teams meetings will be able to take that information in even further. And if you give a thumbs up in real life, it'll give a thumbs up to the people in the meeting room, and they can see that visual cue. Likewise, that ties into all the components that we have together to make a much better hybrid experience. So whether you sat in the meeting room, you sat at the home office, or sat wherever you're physically at, it won't matter, because everybody's going to have the same real estate, the same voice, the same understanding, and the same ability to be able to present that information. So that kind of brings me to my end of my session. I believe that we have the ability to have some more questions and queries as well and start kind of pulling that information together.
Thank you, Jason. So,
Thank you.
It's always a pleasure. And I'll speak to you later. So, few key messages from this, and I'm going to wrap up really quickly because I know we're running 1 minute over now, and I always struggle to be succinct, and I'm not helping the situation right now. So when you're doing these larger meetings, these all-company events, pick the right technology, because it's always easy to pick one of these and do it wrong. Like the Christmas play they did over Teams live events, and I was embarrassed because it was so terrible. They should have picked perhaps the NDI broadcast out rather than something that wasn't really designed for that kind of thing. Pick the right tool for the job. And when we're thinking about those team meetings, like Chris said, let's bring in all of Microsoft 365. We've got this suite. We don't just use it asynchronously as we're working on things in isolation or over chat messages and in channels. And we don't want meetings just to be face-to-face. It's a valuable part of a team getting together. But getting together, collaborating on stuff, doing the things that we'd do if we had a whiteboard in the room together that we could all work on, being able to ask questions, record information, automate some of the boring bits of a meeting, like going through documents, is crucial. You know, it makes meetings take less time, and who doesn't want that? And as Jason said, you know, the way that spaces are being used for meetings is changing, and you need to go with that. You know, the cost has come down. A telepresence system, like Jason referred to there, $100,000 or more for £2,000, $2,000, you'll get the same sort of capabilities in a meeting room. And if you bought kit, as people return to the office, those new features that you saw Jason demonstrate, you know, they're coming right now. Some of them might need extra kit because they need AI to be running inside the hardware, but most of them, they're part of that investment that you might have made, you know, a year or two ago as well. It's a platform that evolves. Build the spaces to work well with it as well. So one thing we should say is please go to the expo area. There's loads of sponsors here today. Of course, we would love you to come and see Content and Cloud. We have prizes on the stand that you can win. Also come and see our Fresh stand, where we will show you the world's best, according to me, intranet. And of course all of us and everybody that probably used it. So talk to us on the Fresh stand too for loads of great information on that. And thank you very much. And one last thing, check out our blogs, check us out on Twitter, and check out our podcast. Thank you very much.
Thank you.